What's up, Duke fans? Welcome to the Devil's Den podcast. I'm your host, Josh Smith, joined by my co-host, Raul. Happy to welcome in Brian Geisinger here. Obviously, if you've been with us for a while, you've been with Brian for a while. We've had him on here several times. If you're not super familiar, Brian co-hosts the Buzzbeat podcast. He does a lot of writing for the Devil's Den over at 247 Sports for us. You can catch him on Substack. You can get your NBA stuff, your college basketball stuff, not just Duke. But he does a lot of stuff for Duke, and so we figured we'd bring him back in here, talk a little bit about this thing. Obviously, Duke's 10-0, so we have a lot of points to get into. With Brian, we kind of figured, like, okay, how do we want to use his time? And me and Raul were talking here, and I really think the offense right now is just an interest to us in terms of how Duke has been able to unlock spacing, how Duke has really been able to unlock the 5 out. For some of y'all who have been with us a while, if you go back about 2 years ago, maybe about 2.5 years ago, we had Brian on in the summer before Flip's sophomore season, and we were really talking about, like, how can Jon get to this 5 out, what it's going to look like. This is going to be a bit of a different conversation than I think that season looked like. But Brian, man, welcome back. Thanks for coming in. I guess before we kind of really get started here, just give me your kind of like global, Duke being at 10-0. Let's not talk about Michigan quite yet, but how impressed are you with Duke so far?
Yeah, hard to be, not impressed with them at the moment. To have 3 wins over, or I guess 4 wins over top 25 teams plus a top 55, 60 team in Texas on a neutral site. They've won on the road. They've won at home. They've won neutral site. They've won games where they had a lead and lost it. They've had other sorts of comebacks. They've won with just different lineup combinations. They've won through foul trouble. They're top 10 nationally in offensive and defensive efficiency. Cam Boozer's playing excellently. And even with all of that, even with the wins, even with how sort of like intact the defense looks at the moment, even as the rotations are, I think starting to get a little bit more fleshed out, there's still a ways to go. It just feels like there's another level for them to get to offensively. And you brought up the Flip team from 23-24. That was a team that also ended up top 10 nationally in adjusted efficiency and really, really played off of the Flip Jared McCain combination. That was really like Jeremy Roach obviously was a big piece for them, but really it was, they built out from Flip as this like high post passing tower, and in Jared McCain, just his gravity and his shooting that he could present. And as good as they were, it still never felt like they quite got to the gear that they ultimately needed to hit to be. I mean, they still won. Got to the Elite Eight. It was a very good team, but I think in part because of the just sort of like the Mark Mitchell paradox, like they never quite figured out how they wanted to like nail down their spacing. And to me, in the last couple of seasons, Duke has sort of, I think there's a better approach in a sort of like more refined template. But even with this current team, like they're still figuring that out, where to be and how to cut and where to cut. And so while I have been very impressed, and obviously some of these games, they're coin toss. If you play the Michigan State or Florida games back, maybe Duke doesn't come out with some of those results, but early on in the season, at the sort of like quarter point of the year, pretty impressed with what Duke has done so far against one of the toughest schedules in the country. So a lot to get into, and I think there's a couple of like really interesting components with the offense, both in terms of like personnel, statistical profile, and sort of like sets and offensive packages that they're leaning into.
Yeah, and I guess, the way we set this up is kind of like, so a lot of what Duke has done this year has been inverted a little bit. So I was like, all right, let's start with the bigs, right? Like, let's start with, I guess, the strength here a little bit. And so when I say bigs, I'm really kind of tapping into Cam Pat Malik as just being this like triumvirate hub, both ends for Duke. Almost always 2 of those guys are out there, it seems like at a time together, which really was something for us in the offseason where it's like, ooh, how is that going to work? Like, how are you going to tap into this? All 3 of these guys are like elite passers. I don't know if you would quantify any as elite shooters. Cam has shown that he's definitely growing into that. I mean, maybe he is an elite shooter at this point. And, we watched the exhibitions, and there was a little bit of like, ooh, Pat and Cam are trying to do the same thing at the same time here a little bit. Like, how do we get the flow? Fast forward 12 games, and we're starting to really see that. For you, Brian, like what has that kind of like looked like for you in terms of like how Duke is unlocking the passing just from that 5 spot or 4-5 spot, if you want?
Yeah, with Cam, I mean, he can kind of make every pass, right? Open floor, and in the half court. He's so skilled, passing off the move, passing stationary, passing out of the ball screen, passing out of the post, against double teams, against stunts, passing out of the sort of like high post in designed actions, when they're looking to clear out a side and they send Isaiah Evans to the wing or the corner off of a flare screen or a back cut. Can certainly pass over the top and make really like snappy, impressive, decisive, on target reads. And they've also, as I'm sure, I mean, I wrote about it between the Florida and Michigan State games, and then Duke really leaned into it during the road win in East Lansing. But getting him into more of these sort of like inverted ball screen opportunities too, and they've been dynamic in those so far. And I think teams will start to an extent adjust and have just sort of like be better prepared for that. I was a little surprised just how much Michigan State really kind of was a little rigid in sort of terms of their approach with handling those things. I do think some teams will probably try to more aggressively switch them, but just like it opens up so much of the floor because Cam and Isaiah can get into their 2-man game with Isaiah, roving as a shooter and popping and slipping out. It can allow Cam to kind of get downhill. And depending on where everyone else is on the floor, like you've either got Malik or Pat in the dunker spot down low, or those guys are spaced to the opposite wing and they're going to slot cut in. And you've seen Cam pick up on that, either hit guys in the dunker spot or hit Malik or Pat cutting in from the wing. You've seen it flipped the other way, and it's been Pat isolated in the post, and it's Cam cutting in from the weak side off the wing or off the slot. And then with Pat as a passer, they're not giving him this sort of like inverted, ball screen actions, but the offense itself is inverted. And I think we probably talked about this when I came on with you guys before the season started. I wrote about it a bunch in the offseason. It was like very obvious that like Duke, especially if you didn't know like where Caleb was going to land or where Cayden might be, like they were clearly going to have to run a lot of the offense through the front court. Like it was going to run through Cam and Pat and Malik. And for good reason. Those guys are like excellent passers. They all map the floor. I think they sort of have like different levels of like risk taking. Malik is probably the most like daring of the passers, but they're all like great like face up passers, face up. And then Duke's going to get into their split action where two guys are going to run in the same direction, and then they're going to split off in opposite directions, and one guy's going to cut. I think Pat, sort of like my favorite, like passing from Pat Gongba, is really like 5 out, facing the basket, and like when guys are vertically cutting downhill, like you see they'll do the sort of like, these are like I think of like Tim Duncan, San Antonio Spurs when they do this, but it's like they throw the ball into Pat, he's not in the mid post, he's above the arc. And then Isaiah will like off ball will like curl off of him and then go downhill and get to the rim. Like Isaiah will run at him like he's going to take a handoff. But then if the defender is chasing hard over the top, then Isaiah will just basket cut and like use Pat, who has the ball, like as a de facto screen. And they've been able to sort of like slip in and get some looks off that. I think that's in the area where guys like, Khamenia and Dame Sarr can sort of like tap into that a little bit more as well. But I think Pat's like his passing when he's facing the basket and there's like vertical cutting action. I really like him sort of like making decisions with that. And then Malik, I sort of like, I would be curious to know. So I don't have the numbers on these types of statistics, but like I like Malik when it's like 5 out and he's in the middle of the floor, and they'll have, some split action or like a flare screen on one side. And then there's going to be action coming up on the second side. But he's so good at reading this sort of like the two like off ball defenders in those split actions. And you would see he and Sion James hooked up on this for a handful of times last season. He and Dame and Isaiah have hooked up on this, but he's so good at like reading what those guys want to do. And again, like, Malik will misfire as a passer on times, but that's when he's really trying to like thread the needle.
Like on he leads with the pass. He throws it to where he thinks the guy's going to be. So if his man isn't ready, then maybe it just kind of, he fires it out of bounds, but
it happens with him.
He throws bullets.
He really does. And he really does have like a feel for, when Malik is in the NBA in a year from now, like I do think he would be fun in like the sort of like passing programs that like Golden State or like Denver have around Draymond or around Jokic, both because he could like play off, those guys and work as a cutter, but also because like he has that kind of like cunning and feel as like a front court playmaker too. So, and then like not to like diminish Khamenia because he's not like he can really like pass and be a connector and those he sort of like flows between the guards and the wings and the bigs within this roster. So he can really pass and obviously he can handle some too. So it has been obviously like it starts with Cam and he can kind of do everything, but Pat and Malik, their ability to especially Pat, again, back to the basket in the post, 5 out facing the basket, or Malik, especially when he's facing the basket and they're getting into their split game, can really, really do damage. And that can, I think, sort of like make up for the fact that Duke doesn't have this sort of like as good as Caleb has been this season. They don't have like an elite, ball handler that's going to run that you want to run like 50 pick and rolls with per game. Right. So they've got to tap into other ways to get 2 on the ball, to bend defenses, to open up cut lanes. And obviously with their ability to space the floor 5 out, have these guys face the rim, and then also really like lean into Isaiah as like a screener or a mover, and just how that can sort of like at the edges of the defense, like shake things up, is a powerful, definitely a powerful combination. And so even if it goes through stretches where it gets a little gummy, they just got to keep running it because they have the tools there to be like a really high end offense.
Yeah, it seems like there's just all these secondary actions happening off the main action. I was reading your article about the L action that they were running. I think that was after the Kansas game that you wrote that, where they were just running it over and over again and again. So for people who don't know, it's kind of like a guard cuts in this L shape. He gets 2 screens, comes out. There's like a guard to guard exchange. And then there's other stuff going on. There's like, Malik Brown might set a screen for Isaiah Evans to pop out. So that's going on the other side. So there's just so much for the defense to pay attention to. I don't know if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this was something that this was a series of plays that at this point, I don't think like because they tweak it and run different stuff out of it. And they've really added stuff, but it became a piece of the picture last season. And it was sort of like the part of the offense that was set up for Kon Knueppel. Like this was his thing. He'd start in the corner. He'd zipper cut up the middle of the lane off these 2 staggered screens. They'd throw it to him at the top of the key. And then usually Malawach or Malik Brown, the 5 who set the second screen as the guard is cutting up the middle of the lane, would turn and set a step up ball screen. And so that was sort of like the base that they would like flow into pick and roll out of that. But one of the other packages was Cooper who would set that first screen, would screen and then duck in like the mid post area. That's what they're doing with Cam this year.
Yeah. That was all those blobs, right? That was where Coop would catch and you either see come on or somebody dunker spot or Coop just goes the whole. Yeah.
But one of the other things, and Duke's got a lot of different like 5 out looks, but one of the ways they like to get into it is they'll have the guard. Again, in this case, it's often, it's going to be Khamenia or it's Cayden or Isaiah Evans. Again, last season it was Kon or Tyrese primarily, but they'll cut up the middle lane off those 2 screens. And instead of receiving a pass, they'll drift out to the opposite wing. And then the 5, they wouldn't do this last season with Kaman, but they would do it with Malik or with Pat, but who are guys who can really pass. They'll then drift to the top of the key. They'll receive a pass from the 1. And then all of a sudden Duke is in 5 out. and then all of a sudden they'll have 2 guards and 2 wings on each side of the court, the 5 in the middle, and then you're going to see usually it's Isaiah Evans is going to start it he's going to crash in from the opposite corner. He's going to look like he's going to set a flare screen and then he's going to slip to the basket, or he's going to set the flare screen, or someone will flare screen for Isaiah. But Duke can just get into all of their 5-out looks off of that. And like the twist that they've really been adding in is like, this is one of the ways they've been getting to the Cam, Boozer, Isaiah Evans inverted pick and roll this season, where Cam will start in the corner. He'll cut up the middle of the lane off of 2 screens. And then Isaiah, it's been Caleb too, but it's primarily Isaiah. He'll run from the opposite corner in, and then they'll set that. He'll set an inverted ball screen. This is the game-winning play they ran at Florida.
Yeah.
It's also the play they ran before halftime against Kansas.
Yep.
And they ran it at a key moment in the Arkansas and Michigan State games too. They ran it a couple of times at MSU. And so,
Brian, is it all the same play though? I'm not to catch up, but is it all the same play is it the same play when Evans comes? And sometimes it looks like he sets it, he ghosts it, or he'll just kind of keep coming. Is that all the same stuff, or am I thinking is this different?
No,
is this just a read within a set? Is that what I'm?
So that I'd be curious. Like, so I think like. What I would say the scripted nature of that is Isaiah coming up to screen.
Yeah.
I think the sort of like the differentiator, because sometimes you're right. Sometimes he won't actually like fully set the
He'll
screen.
Just ghost, and then sometimes
And you could see in the Florida game, he did the hot stove screen, right? Where he sort of like, almost like hit, I think it was Chinyelu. He sort of like hits him with like 2 hands in like the midsection. And so he sets a screen, but he's setting it like on the underneath side, right?
Yeah.
And then usually you see guys when they set that screen, they short roll, like Cam does this too. He'll short roll into the paint. But with Isaiah, he wants to hit that and then pop out to the wing so he can get loose for a 3. And so that's something where like, you'd have to ask Jon, is that something that in the huddle, are they saying like, hey, based off of, look, we think Florida is going to put 2 on the ball, or Michigan State's going to put 2 on the ball. So don't slip it, or don't set it, like ghost out of there. Or we want you to make contact with the opposing guard here, or with the opposing power forward. Because if you're setting it for the guarding Cam, so I think, or do they just say like, Isaiah, you make the read, read?
Yeah.
So it could just be a feel and timing thing, right? Like, for sure, how the defender responds.
Or maybe Cam's calling it, like as he's seeing Slim come up. Maybe Cam's doing some kind of play calls, calling slip, or calling. Yeah. I don't know, man. It gets complicated.
It definitely could. And I do know, especially when Duke is in its like 5-out, like they really just want to get into like reads and flow out of that, right? Like they want that was really like something that they, in my mind, they really like installed and like got up to speed last season. And this is also one of the reasons why I think the offense has another gear this year, because I think you can make it even snappier in terms of like how things are flowing off of Cam and Pat or Malik as these sort of like the twin high post hubs that are out there. But I think on these sort of like ball screening looks, especially when I call it their L series. Duke may have different terminology for it, but like that to me, those are a little bit more like scripted. But the actual like angle or like type of screen that gets set, like that's something that like I think that gets talked about in the huddle. You know what I mean? During the timeout, before the play or whatever, something like that. So that would be my thought, but I could be incorrect about that.
Yeah, there's just so many different ways you can kind of flow into. You mentioned it last year too, and I guess we've started talking about the wings a little bit, because I think for me it's the bigs we've started to really figure that out, right? Like all of our, if you picked out maybe Duke's top 2 players, it might just be Cam and Pat right now in terms of consistency, what they're doing for your offense, how they're like on both ends really, but like especially how they're getting us into stuff. I think probably it's the wings right now, where if you're looking at, and it's not that they're really playing bad, but when I'm looking at like, you're talking about that fruit, like what's left out there. And I'm looking at like, well, Slim has played fine. But there's percentages and efficiency. Like he there's more for him for sure. Dame is probably the guy that has the most room for growth here. But I'll throw Darren Harris in there. I'll throw Nick Khamenia in there as guys that John's talked about of, we got to figure this wing spot out. Like, how does it complement it? How does it work? I've seen a lot of stuff in the NBA now where it's like, it's almost went away from like screenings to get the wings and shooters open, and they're just operating off of like cuts coming off of other screens and relocations and getting themselves go. Like Slim does that a lot too. Like, what are you seeing, I guess, for Duke of like, because to me that is where we got to get to, right? Like, how do we get some of these wings involved? How do you tap into Dame's like an open floor, just relentless attacking nature, getting up and down? Khamenia as that secondary playmaker kind of guy, being able to probe. We've seen a little bit of that. And for me, Slim of like, you know, how do you get him to pop as like a alpha end of game? This is the guy you got to get to the free throw line. This is the guy who's shown a little. I mean, it's a little herky jerky, but the numbers don't really lie. I mean, he's okay with the ball. I mean, so for you, like, what's there that like is just kind of out of reach or that's maybe left for us to tap into?
Yeah, with Isaiah, I mean, I just think he kind of needs to get hot. You know, he had the one big shooting game against Texas to start the season. He hit 4 threes, big shooting night. At Army, he's had some other, the Kansas game, he had a bunch of threes too. But and part of it is like, he's a high volume 3-point shooter that and some percentage of his looks, I don't know if it's 10, 20% or whatever, are like they're kind of crazy shots. It's like if anyone other than like, maybe Darren or maybe Cam, we're taking some.
Yeah, I was say it's probably not.
Immediately, just be like, "What do you do?" Yeah, that's like a come sit next to the coaching staff on the bench for a few minutes, and just cool off kind of deal.
Hydrate, kid. Yeah.
So he takes deep shots. He takes high volume. I mean, he is a like proto, like quick trigger movement shooter, right? High volume, come off down screens. I'll need to see if I can like pull up the numbers because I have every game from Duke charted on my other computer, and Isaiah really hasn't shot well coming off screens this season, like especially like down screens. Like he's been like a little cool on that. He's been a little bit better off of flares, but coming off actual like pin down screens, he's been pretty. I'll pull up the numbers at some point, but I don't have them in front of me at the moment. Just I think that to me is something like he's a great shooter. He's a great off of screen shooter. I understand. I think why he's sort of like better coming off of flares. It's sort of a different, footwork, alignment. It's a little different that way.
How he squares up and gets into it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he's like, especially, flare screens where he's able to sort of like come off his right foot as the inside. So he's like running to the left side of the floor. And you just like automatically have that right foot sort of like locked in square at the rim. Now, coming off down screens, you're having to flare it a little bit or whatever. But what I will say with Isaiah is he's getting to the line more this season. His free throw rate is up 10%. He's drawing a full foul more per 40 minutes this season. And he's an almost 90% free throw shooter. So you add that into the movement shooting component and this sort of like his work as a cutter, because I think that has kind of come online this season a little bit more too. Like that is a way to get him going to the rim. He's shooting 53% on twos. The thing where I would like to see him be a little bit more poised, because I think the 3-point shooting is just going to come. Like, I mean, he's got to still make the shots, but like from the outside looking in, like they're going to keep drawing up looks for him. He's going to keep shooting a ton of them. And it would be a problem if either of those two things stopped. So, like, in my opinion, he's not a 32%, 3-point
No,
shooter.
this is a guy who shot 42% on 12 attempts per 40 minutes last year. There's no reason to think he's suddenly down to 32% on fewer attempts, right?
Certainly not. And again, 90% free throw shooter, so which is an indicator of touch. In shooting, sort of like a helpful indicator for projecting the overall shooting, aptitude of a player or whatever. But for me, the thing that I would like with Isaiah would be just like a little bit, he's a low turnover player, just 10% turnover rate. I wish he would be a little bit more poised passing on the move. Like once every 2 games, he has some, pass where he sort of like has curled a screen or it's a catch and go, and he wants to throw the lob.
Mhm.
He tried throwing one to Pat. Maybe it got deflected at Michigan State.
Oh, that was
just
crazy.
had like
It's like
Yeah.
5 feet over the rim. I don't know what happened there.
you could have had Malik on Pat's shoulders, and I'm not sure they like would have got, it was like way over the top. Even if you have Kaman, jumping out of the gym, I'm not sure he's getting that.
He does like that underhanded LaMelo ball lob sometimes.
He's got the little LaMelo pat. Yeah, he likes that.
So I would like for him to maybe hone some of that in because he has the chance to be a really like important passer for them because his shooting is so impactful and he draws so much attention when he runs around the floor and he sets a screen and then cuts in the other direction or he comes off of a screen. It forces the defense to react, and he can often get two defenders on the ball. And you have seen him have success this season where he curls one of those screens and he throws the lob to Pat, which was like the Kon Malawatch play last season. And you've seen him run some empty corner pick and roll as like a ball handler this year too. So like I think he's shown some like decent growth, and maybe it's not he has not turned into just like a S tier, on ball creator in the span of the off season. But I think there's an opportunity for him to be an even more sort of like pivotal playmaker for them, especially with how Duke wants to run the offense, playing off of Cam and Pat and Malik. And then with Khamenia, like I think maybe it's happening now. Like he was really confident shooting the ball at Michigan State. He took 6 threes in that game, hit a 3. I think their first bucket was a Khamenia 3. You're seeing he and Dame they're stationed in the corners a lot. They're kind of are occupying some of like the Sion space last season. And those two are taking a lot of standstill catch and shoot threes in the corner. That's something that like every time I chart, games, I differentiate spot up 3-point attempts by whether the player was moving or not. So like if they're moving, I'll say, movement, relocation. If they're just standstill, I'll just say the location on the court. And it is amazing how many times I've written a lot of times in like, Nick Khamenia spot up 3 court.
It seems very deliberate exactly where they are too, right? Dame's always on that right corner. Yep. And Nick is usually on the left side in the corner or on that left wing, maybe a little bit in. Maybe he'll take some right corner threes too, but Dame is almost always in that right corner.
And those guys have been good from the corners. Like Khamenia, 7 of 19 on corner threes this season, 40%.
Almost all of Dame's, right? Like
Dame is 10 of 16. Yeah. So nice. 10 of his 11,
1 of 15 non-corner threes. Yeah,
exactly. So like they're very much in the sort of like Dame especially is in that like 3-and-D component role. And one of the reasons why I think Nick has gotten to start and play a little bit more in recent games, started the last 2 games, both big wins. He does a lot of stuff pretty well, But I think they just having one more guy who can like really handle run pick and roll, be another connective passer. It feels like he's really like giving them some of the Sion stuff, like gives them a little dribbling, a little passing, a little shooting. And obviously with his size, he can switch a bunch of positions too. So I would say like, if anything for Khamenia, it's like, keep shooting, but just like keep shooting those catch and shoots. And I'll just be kind of curious to see like because you do see them giving some of like the empty side down screens where he can curl and look for 3. And you do see him getting to run some empty side pick and roll with Cam as a screener. But just like, does he get more of that? Basically, is there more on ball opportunities for him? Because right now, I think you have to feel pretty good about the catch and shoot game and the cutting and the connective passing. But just like, can he be another guy that gives you like, he is a secondary creator, but can there be some nights where he dials it up a little bit more? Because right now he's hovering at 16% usage. So I kind of can see if he could sort of like tick that up a little bit. And then with Dame, like very much like I've been very impressed with Dame's defense so far this season. I think he's really brought it. And I think his work at the top of the zone down the stretch against Michigan State, even if he wasn't recording blocks and steals and getting a ton of rebounds, I thought was like pretty pivotal. Just like having his frame and his hands and his hand speed atop the zone was a big deal. I've liked him a lot as like a gap off ball defender this season. Offensively, like the stuff to me that has worked has been the corner shooting. And then like when he's able to work as a cutter. And my thought for him, because I think long-term, I like Dame a lot as a prospect. Like right now, him on the ball is like a little, it's tough right now. Like he's just a little, I don't think he quite has like the handle to like consistently create advantages and then the sort of like speed to like take advantage of those. Now, I think he's like I think he can be a good decision maker with the ball. I think he can be like attack closeouts. He had a nice catch and go dunk at one point this season off that. So like that for me would be like, just like lean into that as much as possible and then get moving as a cutter even more so, because like he should be, to me, like the key to unlocking him is really like is Cam, especially as like whether it's Cam throwing the touchdown passes over the top in like the on the outlets or on the hit aheads, and Dame being the best, wing guard athlete on the roster, him just being the guy that's running a fly pattern down the floor and like looking to sort of like steal points that way. Or it's just like really cutting with even more pop when Duke gets into its like half court 5-out flow, because whether that's him working the split action game and he's cutting to the rim and he's looking for a catch and finish, or it's a post up with Cam and the double team's coming and he sees the double team coming a half second before the defender leaves and all of a sudden he's darting to the rim. So I would, for Dame, like my plan would be like finishing and playing off the catch just as much as possible and like making quick decisions with the ball. So it's
the timing, right? Like the quick is the time. Like, cause man, I was even going to ask you about like some of the baseline, like, can we open up baseline for him? But then like, I'm thinking and it's like, well, we've tried that a little bit. And like, I know 3 times we've like hit him and he wasn't ready for the pass, or one of them was just like, hey man, Malik, dude, that was like a flamethrower, bro. Like I get it, but like maybe just ease back a little. But a few of them has just been the timing where either he's like mistimed the cut a little bit and we haven't really been able to get him, or he wasn't ready for the catch or something. Because I'm wondering, can we crib anything from, and I hate to even say this, but like a little bit of what Carolina's doing with like how they're using kind of the Visar or whatever to like catch, and you're seeing Caleb Wilson do some of these like really quick, just baseline pops for like massive dunks. And I mean, Dame's that level of athlete, right? Like he's not Caleb Wilson good. Caleb's phenomenal. I get that. But in terms of that action specifically off of big to big, like, is that there for him? Can we dunker spot him a little bit? Like how do we make it easy for him, I guess?
Well, I would add that Caleb Wilson seems like a much stronger player at this point.
For sure.
And Dame, one thing that jumps out to me always on those cuts and even on his drive sometimes too, is there's like this herky jerkiness and he can get bumped off his spot a little bit.
The lower body gets bumped
and
up.
So he's struggling to finish, more than you would think a guy of his size would.
Yeah, I do think there's like a at this point of his career, and he's 19. Like, I do think there's like a physicality limitation for him, right? And that's sort of why, like, longer term, I like him as a prospect. I mean, I'm obviously like he's well thought of as a 2026, draft prospect, but like offensively, I think it's going to be like offensively in the half court, it's really going to have to be him like playing off of other guys. And the physicality as a driver, again, like you guys just said it a second ago, like he gets knocked off his spots, he gets bumped. I watch every Hornets game, and like as amazing as Brandon Miller is when he plays, and he's hurt a lot, like Brandon Miller gets
same thing,
shoved around and knocked, and all of a sudden this finely tuned athlete is like crumpling, you know what I mean? Like it just throwing up like awkward looks. And so like it happens even to like awesome 3rd year NBA wings, it's like So he's got time. But he just needs to get a little bit stronger, and I think get a little bit better at like playing through contact. In general, I think Duke's one of the reasons why like Caleb really stands out at times, and maybe Khamenia too, is those guys like will really can like play through contact,
Yeah.
And so I think Isaiah needs to get a little bit better at that as well, though I think he's made strides. And Dame, for me, that's sort of like the next step for him. And whether that comes this season or it's 15 months from now or whatever, that's ultimately why for him I would start with like get him into space and get him working as a receiver, playing off of Cam's high post passing. And then defensively, I feel great about I think he's been pretty awesome on that side of the floor. So just kind of want him to keep it up. But the switching defensively, the point of attack atop the zone, the point of attack on the press, his ability to be a guy that can dig, stunt, get in driving lanes as a gap defender and guard on ball. I think all of that stuff has been pretty darn good. So I would just say like lean in even more and like what's good. And I've heard Jon say this after both the Florida game and maybe the Howard game too, but like they're looking for ways to get Dame going.
Yeah,
he said it with Khamenia too, and probably Darren Harris as well. For Darren, I think because of the shooting, the stuff's all there. Like you
just shoot the ball, kid. Yeah,
just needs to play a little bit more. Basically, and he's sort of it's tough. It's hard rotation to crack. But like with Dame, maybe you got to find ways to get him going as like a handoff guy too, and just sort of like being a missile going to the rim. You know what I mean? Like try to like get him a straight line drive where you're clearing out space and all of a sudden he can just hit a gap and get downhill. So those would be sort of some of my thoughts. And again, Pat obviously too, but Cam really is like the guy that you can lean into to sort of like unlock a guy like Dame.
So if Dame never at Duke becomes anything more than just like a corner shooter, we know his defensive value. All the numbers say it's just kind of off the charts, really. Last I looked, his on-off on defense, Duke is like 22 points per 100 better. They're a little bit worse on offense, but just my question is that value enough where if he's just standing in the corner and he's not really able to do anything else offensively, is that worth the trade-off? Or do you just have to roll with Khamenia for even more minutes, just because he can give you a little bit more ball handling and versatility?
Yeah, I think it seems like right now, where their heads are at, right? Based off sort of like how those guys have kind of like flipped a little bit, and both those guys are going to play and they need, the cheap answer is they need both. Like they just do. They require both of those guys to hit their ceiling this season. And those guys are going to play a lot with each other as well. But luckily, I think Dame, because he can hit from the corners and because he can be a pressure point on the rim as a cutter or in transition, it's not like he's like a liability offensively. And Khamenia, because he's 6'8", 215, he's in the right place. And I think he gives you some sort of like toughness. I think he's actually like a mostly fine defender, if not like, slightly positive on that side of the court. Like they're both playable, right? You saw they both played down the stretch in a lot of these close games. Dame was a huge defensive piece for them at Michigan State. And obviously Khamenia made a bunch of big plays in that game for them as well and hit a couple of threes. So they need both those guys. And I think right now, maybe because the defense is just like a half step ahead of the offense or a full step at whatever, like you're trying to like juice the offense a little bit more. And so you'd rather have a slightly more versatile shooter and like a better, connective passer, on ball creator with Khamenia to sort of like supplement what you're getting from Cam, Pat, and Caleb.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that, you mentioned Caleb, so we'll go ahead and we'll get into our backcourt. And I want to preface this a little bit. We've really tried, Brian, the last, couple weeks. I've been pretty kind of like, I don't want to make this season a Caleb versus Cayden thing, like a constant. Yeah. And It's hard not to a little bit, just because I think a lot of us, me included, was like, man, I really like when they're out there together a little bit. I think that would help Cayden a little bit to have a more of a release valve. It just doesn't really work a ton with the way the roster is. But anyway, we'll talk about the backcourt primarily as those two guys, of just more of that kind of one, if you will. For us, man, it's Caleb has really just picked up from Houston. Like, he came out of that Houston game, didn't really score a whole lot, but was just tough as nails, committed himself defensively, and just started letting things just try to happen for him organically a little bit. We're getting into it. I mean, he's Arkansas, Florida, Michigan State, 3 big-time games. Caleb, you probably can't put him as the best player with Cam Boozer up there. Pat's done his thing, but Caleb was right there, I think, in just terms of importance for Duke, especially at this point of attack. Like, when he comes off the floor, and again, I don't want to make this just a Caleb Cayden thing, but it's obvious for me. Like, when he's off, it's like, ooh, like the point of attack defense just feels like much different. The offense kind of looks good with Cayden out there at times and what he's able to do. But what are you kind of making of that dynamic in real time, as Jon is clearly trying to figure out, like, how do these things pop? For me, Cayden's your Tyus Jones, that kind of Jeremy Fears of, like, he needs 30 minutes a game as an orchestrator to let him really get, like, the feel, pick his spots, kill you, late shot clock like moments, things of that nature. Much harder to do that. And
lately he's been getting 12 minutes, 8 minutes.
Right. And it's these bursts, which is like, it's hard to run your team and that kind of, I don't know, I'm rambling a little bit, Brian, here, but what are you making of this sort of dynamic, and how does Duke kind of maximize what they have of these two guys?
Yeah, just for starters, like my honestly, some of my like the gripes with Cayden have really just been defensively, like him getting lost off the ball. It happened once in the Florida game for a 3, happened again against Michigan State, and like
when he checked in too.
He's a freshman
second half.
He's a freshman guard, so like let's we gotta. And I know he's a high level player. He's played in big games at the prep level, international level before he even got to Durham. So I get it, but like he's a freshman guard playing, and Duke's played a super tough schedule. So like it's not a surprise that he was going to have some blemishes on that side. With Caleb, man, you kind of just have to like give it up. I was in Cameron the day of the Wake Forest game last season.
Oh, the DNP.
March 3rd, DNP. That's something that, like, if it's been talked about, I haven't seen much of it. I know no one talked about it after that game last night, or that game when it happened back in March. But I remember thinking like, oh man, maybe this is it. Like maybe he's done here. Like maybe this is sort of like the end of the road. And then, because
that was like senior night too, wasn't it? So it was like kind of a big, it was a weird.
It was the last home game of the season. But then they go to Carolina 5 days later, and he helped swing the game for them. And he was huge, just like diving over the floor, making hustle plays, getting finishing in transition. Just
that
like
dive tip out to Sion was
unbelievable. And he just like it. To me, it's felt like since then, like he just like found his juice again. He hasn't played perfectly since then, but he became a piece of the rotation. And I think Duke has done a good job this year, sort of like taking the things he does best, which are, to me, are like his speed and power as a driver. And I like Caleb best driving when he's playing off the catch, as opposed to him sort of like, organizing, a million pick and rolls. They need him to run a lot of pick and roll this season. Like he probably does benefit this year by the fact that like, there isn't as good as Cayden is, and as much as I like long-term think he's going to be a dynamic player at Duke and beyond, like they kind of just have to keep playing Caleb. it's like he last season, it's like, all right, Sion and Tyrese are here, and, Coop's playing with the ball a lot. It just Kon's playing with the ball a lot. It just, they had a bunch of guys on the perimeter that they could organize offense through this season. And this year, they just don't have as much of that, right? We've just spent a big chunk of the start of this pod talking about how much they need the 4s and 5s to facilitate. And that probably allows, Caleb to, I would hope, like, one, he gets to sort of just like play through mistakes a little bit more. And hopefully, like, to me, and I don't like, I'm at the risk of being like an armchair psychologist. Like, I thought a lot of Caleb's issues were just like between the ears, you know what I mean? And like the pressure packed, nature of being a point guard at Duke. Like, it probably is a lot of fun, and it probably is really hard sometimes. And so I felt a lot for him last season. Like, he clearly came into last year kind of thinking it would be like this year, and he loses the starting spot, and then he was real up and down after that. And then he found it that last month of the season, and to see him carry it into this year, he has more opportunities. He's got more leeway, but that he's taking advantage of it is cool. And it's kind of, I mean, you could have even said this about Tyrese last year. You could have said it about Wendell Moore Jr. a couple of years ago too. Like, seeing those guys stick it out, and sort of like really like at the, sort of like the back half of their careers, like find the role that sort of suits them best, is pretty neat. So for him, I think it's the drives, the touch on the floaters, the getting out in transition, the 2-man empty corner ball screens with Cam have been good this season. And again, getting to play off of that guy is a huge help. Cam's going to draw a ton of attention when he pops and when he screens and pops. And I think Caleb has capitalized off that as a live ball driver. To me, he still has, like, the Arkansas game was like a good reminder of this. He was terrific in that game. 15 points, 8 assists, made big plays. He probably has like 2 or 3 like head scratchers per decisions per game where it's like, what were you like that? Why that pass? Why then? Why that not then? But it's like, I mean, like, Duke's got to live with it. It's like they need his speed, pop, and physicality with the ball.
Well, he's giving you the defense this year too, at least, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
At least now, like before last year, I know at the end of last year, but before that, it was you were having some of that, but you weren't having this point of attack defense and this like team defense and this toughness. Now it's like, oh, okay, I'm willing to, like, that pass against a turnover against Arkansas was like, oh my God, you just won the game and maybe lost the game and then won it again, and then like, oh my God, but it was okay if you're gonna lock in defensively too. That really just takes it to like another level of freedom, I think. And something you mentioned, Brian, that I haven't even talked about on here, but the psychological piece, not so much just for Caleb, but how that impacts Cayden too. Like, once Caleb comes out of that, like once you are in a place like that and you come out of it, he's not going to give that shit up. Not easy. Not in, like, for Cayden, it's hard for you to come in and try to take that when it's like, now you weren't here. Like, you haven't went. That's what college basketball's about. You haven't went through this, bro. I'm not willing to give this up yet. Like, I'm going to dig in and go harder. I'm not going to hang my head. Like, I did that.
2 years of up and down plus.
Yeah, I did that. Like, you're really going to have to come get this. If you want my spot, you're going to have to come get it.
And it's clear that, like, those, like, I think it's nothing but good vibes on the team.
For sure.
You know what I mean? But it's
healthy,
like they want that competition. They talk about, I mean, I'm sure Isaiah thought he should have played more last season, but he was behind Sion and Kon. Those guys start and play every night for the Charlotte Hornets in the NBA right now. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
when we asked him about the Kansas game, he made sure to say, like, "Oh, you looking forward to this against in the last year?" He's like, "Oh, I didn't play last year."
But
he knew, right? Like, he knew.
That's the other thing too. I do think this got lost a little bit last season when discussing like the Caleb Foster situation. Just like the guy who took his spot, Sion, was a pro last season. You know what I mean? Like, was a pro and like is the guy that like contributes in the NBA now. Yeah.
Like, a pro is pro, right?
And
like, just
was a
dude,
22, 23-year-old adult. And he was also, I mean, Sion was also like he was exactly what he was the perfect fit for them too. So like, just like Caleb didn't lose it to like replacement level ACC guard. He lost it to an awesome team defender, decision maker, and corner shooter. That's one of the things too. Like, Caleb's shooting to me has always been like a bit of a mystery because he's never been like a great free throw shooter, though he made him when they counted at Michigan State. But he's always been a pretty good like catch and shoot guy. I wrote about this actually like after the Champions Classic his freshman year. when they beat Michigan State.
Yeah, I busted them. Yeah,
he was really good playing off the catch. That game really, for better or for worse, did like inform a lot of my like thoughts on him as a player. Because the thought I had for a long time was like, he's probably more of like a combo guard than he is just sort of like a lead ball handler. Because I think he's better shooting off the catch. I like him as a driver when he's like playing off the catch, or it's a second side pick and roll, that kind of stuff, or he's just getting to be a missile in transition. He gets to that spin move where he goes left and spins back to his right hand. But he's clearly like, this was the thing. Like he's clearly made some growth as an on ball guy too. It's not perfect. And I mean but he's made a lot of big plays this season. Ultimately though, and this is again, sort of like a cheap answer, like they need both those guys. Like it's obvious they need both of them. They need Cayden to be better in March than he is now in December. And I think he will be, like barring something unforeseen or just like the wheels falling off, like he's going to get better as the year progresses. And they need both those guys. You talked about it, like those Caleb and Cayden have played 50 minutes together so far this season. Duke was plus 35 with them on the court, and they've scored 1.40 points per possession with those two playing together. And it's a small sample, but you're going to see more of that, and they're going to need both of them. They need Cayden's passing and driving and playmaking, and like the connection he has with his brother in the pick and roll. Like they need that too. But huge to see Caleb sort of like make the steps he's doing. I mean, Duke would not be 10-0. Obviously, he hit the shot that basically won them the game at Michigan State too. It was a huge shot, to step in off on the wing and hit the kick out from Cam when they ran the inverted pick and roll with Cam and Isaiah. So hats off to
lined it up too, didn't he? I mean, just sat there, recognized time, space, everything that he had, and not that he drained it, that it was a swish or anything. But hey, man, you take a soft shot like that, shoot, you get a little roll. I mean,
a ton. If you've ever been to a game where Caleb's playing or seen him warm up in the gym or whatever, he puts a ton of backspin on the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like
because he has that almost
like
one-handed shot.
Yeah, the guide hand doesn't touch, man.
It's not my favorite shot, but he puts so much spin on it. And that is the thing that's going to give you the backspin to get those things to
get the bounce
and fall back through,
Old Matty Jones on there. Yeah.
To your point, I don't think Duke beats Arkansas either without him. That second half was just Cam and Caleb essentially. Mm-hmm. That was all the scoring.
Yep. Those guys, the 2-man game, you've seen them. They run that action a lot. Obviously, they run the empty corner stuff, but they run the action a lot too, where it's like it's a horn set, but then someone like comes out of the corner and like Iverson cuts over the top of the defense, and then Pat or Malik will be at one elbow and they'll cut down the middle of the lane, and then Cam will just sort of like step up one or two paces and then set the ball screen for Caleb. And like that was a money play last season with Sion and Cooper. That was how they got to a lot of Cooper short roll action, and that was one of their like go-to pick and roll sets where Sion wasn't just like the offensive caretaker, you know what I mean? Like he was that just brought the ball up and kind of got them into their flow. It was like, no, Sion's actually going to drive it this possession in the pick and roll. And that's been a big play for them. I think they're to me, they're sort of like go-to late game actions are Cam, Isaiah, inverted pick and roll, and then Caleb, Cam, pick and roll, whether it's empty corner or it's at the top of the key off that Iverson, off the initial.
Because there's a lot of Caleb getting into the middle of the paint there, kind of just going straight down the middle.
And they'll reset it, and they'll kind of, it's a little like Tyus and Jaleel used to do this all the time back in the day a little bit, where he's just kind of probing. I thought too, we talked about it a little bit, but just Caleb's maturity in that Michigan State game. Cam picks up his 4th foul, and I don't know if this is like where he was coming from, but he comes down and calls that ball screen. And he did not allow Cam any opportunity to pick up a foul there, which, dude, for me, as like I'm sitting there watching and I'm like, oh my God, like easy Cam. They're wanting you, they're gonna bait you, they're gonna want. And Caleb is just like, he waits, he let him set, he backs up, he comes in easy and just tells him, hey, reset, like reflip, I'm gonna come back, we'll get into it here. That type of stuff from Caleb, it's not gonna get talked about, it's not gonna really be anywhere, but these just like little things that's what Duke did last year to teams. It was like you could watch Duke play, and there's a lot of cool stuff that they're doing, but you're like, how the hell are they like plus 30 teams? Like Michigan, it was these little just like little micro detail, and we're gonna just spread this across our entire roster of like our 8, and we're gonna just grind you to death. Like we're just gonna put you in this, and it's, I know Boogie hit the big shot with Florida, but like we had him in like torture jail like all game, dude. Especially Lee. It's like Caleb, and it's a lot of it's just Caleb, man, of like how he's able, him and the bigs. I don't know if you call it icing it or just kind of like stalemating some of these like screens. The one that he was able to get the steal on.
He's good at, Duke weaks a lot of ball screens. They're going to try to like push guys, keep it on the left side of the floor and force right-handed guys to go left. Caleb is really good at the point of attack, like angling his body, you know what I mean, to get between the ball and the screener, just so he keeps them on that side of the court. He was good at it. Sion was good at it last year too.
Yeah.
And obviously it doesn't hurt if you've got, Malik, roaming around,
daring you to make some weird risky pass. Yeah.
But I was looking at this earlier today. Again, this is all, it's just December, whatever here, but this is according to CBB analytics in what the site defines as clutch minutes, which I'm guessing they're going by the same like NBA rules, which is last 5 minutes of the game, score within 5 points. Like that's the differential in either direction. In those minutes, Duke's offense has scored 1.56 points per possession. They're shooting
good
53% on half court attempts, including 6 of 9 on threes. And in those minutes, Duke has really taken care of the ball, won the possession battle game, a turnover rate of 6.8% and 41.7% offensive rebound rate in those minutes too. So it's a small sample, they're not going to shoot, 67% on, clutch threes throughout the season, but it does speak to the fact that like they've managed those late game moments well offensively, by really taking care of the ball, and just given how much Caleb is on the ball. I think that sort of really speaks a lot of credit to him. And one of the other things that is nice, because I sort of touched on this a second ago, because he is a good catch and shoot and catch and go player, he can work spotting up around the Cam Isaiah inverted action too, right? Like teams still have to honor him. He's still available as a kick out threat. And I think that just sort of speaks to his versatility too, that he can play without the ball and be, pretty good without it too.
Yeah, I can't think of a game where he hasn't closed. I'm not sure if I'm right there, but I mean, besides, blowouts, obviously, when the whole starting lineup's sad, but, so he's been out there, Cam's been out there. They've kind of been the constants. I guess maybe Isaiah, but Duke went 3 bigs against Florida. So, it's mostly been Cam and Caleb as the closers.
Yep. They're going to be the ones. I mean, Pat's going to get his moments too, but those are going to be the guys, on the ball for sure. Like it's just that's what it's going to be for Duke this season.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're sitting here and there's just so much more room for growth, but to do it at 10-0, and honestly, for me in my head, it's like, well, Tennessee and UCF aren't no slouches either. So like I'm 12-0 for myself, right? It's like, hey, we have proved that like we can play against pretty much any team. Like
UCF's been good this year, man. Donnie's got him pitched up. I'm sure you guys have talked about these numbers a little bit. I feel like I remember talking about this as a topic in general before the 23-24 season. Like, would Duke play faster under Scheyer? And I got asked by another like media member scout this offseason, like if I thought Duke would play faster this year. And my response was like, I don't know. Like, I kind of think they're going to do their thing. And this person's like the sort of like the thrust behind this thought was that like the boozers would sort of like be catalysts with the hit ahead passes. Like would those guys just be sort of like kickstarters and do it faster? This is according to Ken Pom. Duke's offense is averaging 15.4 seconds per possession this season, which is probably top 30, top 40 in the country, and is like more than a second and a half faster than where they were last season. So over Scheyer's first 3 years in 22-23, 18.7 seconds per possession, 23-24, 17.5 seconds per possession, 24-25, 17.1 seconds per offensive possession, and this year 15.4 seconds per possession. Last year, 25% of Duke's field goal attempts came with between 20 to 30 seconds on the shot clock. Through the first 10 games this year, that's up to 34.8%. In 93% of those shots are 3-point attempts or they're at the rim. So I do think Duke is playing faster, and the spots they're going to target on the court. Like they're going to take threes, they're going to get to the rim, and they're going to take a ton of threes. And so I do think that pace of play, and I think ultimately that's going to help guys like Dame, Cayden, Khamenia. Like I think that's a way to get those guys going a little bit. And look, maybe the offensive rebounding influences those numbers too, just in terms of like how you're registering a possession or whatever. But they're playing fast and they're taking a ton of shots early in the clock, and I do think that has something to do with really with Cam's sort of like open floor passing, but also what Cayden and Caleb are doing in Duke's secondary offense or in transition, pushing the ball up the court too with a live dribble.
And I think you could see those numbers even go up a little bit, the pace even improve, because actually earlier in the year before this hard slate of games against great defenses, it was even higher. I think Duke was like top 10 in pace on offense. But of course, they just played two of the best defensive teams in the country in a row, and that kind of dragged it down a little bit. So I'm kind of interested to see, because when I think of Cam's outlet passing, we saw it most against these lesser opponents like Niagara and Howard and stuff. He was just throwing the ball up the court every time, like just literally every single possession.
Kevin Love, like every time, yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, like, as they get into conference and they get to play some Georgia Techs and some, Boston colleges and stuff, it can maybe even creep back up a little bit. I guess the question would be, can you actually execute that versus the best teams? That's going to be a little bit harder.
Yeah, I think sometimes it also depends on like how the best teams want to play too. Like Michigan State wants to get you in the mud, and they did. It was why that's why they had a chance to win that game. Like they dragged it down, like you would expect them to do, at home, and just sort of like the way like teams can really in college ball, just like if they want it in the mud, they're going to get it there. Yep. But yes, I do think there's going to be a way like that to me is like a branch to grab in terms of the low hanging fruit. And that's a way to get your Sarrs going as sort of like runners in transition too.
Yeah. Well, fellas, I mean, I feel like we can kind of start to transition here, wrap up here a little bit. Before we do though, Brian, before I get you out of here, I mean, we got to talk, just give me a 5-minute kind of serenation here of our guy Kon. Obviously you're doing a lot of work for the Hornets. I've been really kind of digging into the work that you and Richie and it's just something cool about hearing a British accent, like just talk about Kon Knueppel that just does something while you're on a walk or whatever. But just the kid's breaking all kinds of records. I mean, we're seeing the 3-point volume. It's not so much hitting in the win-loss category. Obviously you talk about the decimation of injuries and the whole LaMelo Miller anyway, but Kon Flowers specifically here, man, like we talked about it at the draft leading into it. Would Charlotte pop for him? Would he be there? What would that look like? The kid's balling, man.
He's been nothing short
of a year.
It's like Coop has really come on. Obviously, Derek Queen's played great in recent weeks. I mean, those are the three guys right now. Coop has also picked it up as Kon's been like a little a little down the last few games. I'm not worried about him at all. I just sort of wonder if it's a part of they've played a lot of games already, and he's so exposed to like they need him to do a lot for them offensively, whether it's create with the ball, his work as like a screener is a big deal for them. They use him a lot in this like no one runs more guard to guard ball screens in the NBA than the Hornets. They're number one by a mile, and Kon is a big piece of that. He's really good at setting those hot stove screens or slipping screens, and he's great at popping out for a three or popping out for a catch and go drive or playing on the short roll. And you saw some of this last season, like he and Cooper, that inverted pick and roll was like a piece for Duke's offense last season too. And when LaMelo is healthy, like those guys have like awesome chemistry. Like there was a point in the season where that was the number one assist to scorer combination in terms of 3-pointers in the NBA this year. And now LaMelo's just missed too much time, so they've just totally fallen out of the wayside. But that they were tops in the league with the most connections the first couple of weeks of the season. Defensively, he's held up. I think there are some matchups, you know, they get matched up against like the Raptors, and all of a sudden he's got Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram. You know, he's just like 6'10" monsters coming downhill at him, and like, you know, he'll put up a fight, but it's a little tough at times with that. But I think defensively he's like held his own. He's in the right spots generally, and you just can't say enough about like his shooting, his feel for the game, the connective passing is off the charts. And before he sort of like hit this little like mini slump that he's in right now, like I usually don't watch the Hornets games live. Like I'm watching college games or I'm doing something else, but I will like download the film later and watch them either that night or the following morning. But I'll usually check in on the score like halfway through just to see how things are going. And it was the first like 6 weeks of the season, you know, I would just like laugh because like every time I would check in, Kon would be like the only guy or like one of two guys that in the third quarter would be in double figures with, you know, 4 of 7 on threes and, you know, 17 points and a couple of assists, you know, and a steal or whatever. So he's been terrific. And I'll spare you the longer sermon, but just like they're going to have to make a decision long-term on some like big roster pieces, maybe this season or in the off season, but like he's here to stay and he's a guy that they're going to build around. I don't think Kon's ever going to be like a just a pure like go-to guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You need a guy. You need a Cam Boozer, a DeBonsa, somebody. Throw a guy in there this year.
He is a perfect complementary like number 2, number 3 complementary player because he makes good decisions with the ball. And he does struggle against like length. That does lead to some turnovers against, you know, they played the Magic early this season and it was like, oh, whoa, like all of their demons just like coming out at him. And that got a little terrifying, but for the most part, like he's just got the weird Kon counters, you know, the footwork, the shot fakes, the step through, the inside hand finishes. Obviously he's got the strength to sort of like absorb contact and play through contact in ways that, you know, a guy like Dame Sarr doesn't have at the moment. But it really all is set up is that like he is an outstanding and fundamental dribble pass shoot player who makes quick decisions with the ball. He can shoot and he can really move without it. And he's in there to help you in a ton of different ways offensively. And I said before the draft that if Kon's been better than VJ Edgecombe so far this season, but like I basically got to the point where the Hornets landed with the 4th pick that if VJ was there, you know, let's say Ace Bailey goes 3 to Philadelphia or whatever, then take VJ. If VJ's off the board, then I wanted Kon. Yeah. And I did not believe in the fact that he was like, there's some people that thought he was going to be like a Corey Kispert type guy, you know, like Corey Kispert's like a really nice player for the Wizards, but like I was not buying that he's just a pure shooter. Like I'd seen him up close, looked at all the numbers, watched all the film, knew he could do stuff with the ball, and the
pick and roll stuff just didn't lie. I mean,
and he's showed it, and really it's his ability to play both sides of it because he can operate it and he can be the screener. And that's a huge piece for that. That is like the best Charlotte's offense has to offer at the moment, which is not fair to Kon, you know, as a rookie, but hopefully is the sort of like catalyst for better days down the road. And when you cover the Hornets, that's really all you can cling to.
You're always hoping for better days down the road, right?
Yeah, we're always hoping for those better days. Yeah,
I guess the good thing is he's just infinitely scalable. Like, I can't imagine a star that you couldn't put him beside. He would work with anybody.
That to me is the thing, and like maybe Kon and Brandon Miller are like a little too redundant, but like I don't see it that way. Those two guys are so malleable and scalable. Like you can snap them in with anyone because they can both really shoot it. They know how to play without the ball. They can work as screeners. And so like those, I'm very interested to sort of like see if that's, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with LaMelo, but like assuming that like the pieces moving forward are like definitely Kon and most likely Brandon, I think there's a lot of different directions you can go in with those guys because they're super malleable.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping at some point, I just kind of said it there, but like you give me Kon and Cam together over there in Charlotte. Now I know there's a lot of like just roster stuff, but hey,
spot is
hire Clifford at that point, right? Like bring Clifford back and just give him in a minute like an assistant job so that he can just like love life by having a Cam to play 82 games for him and just grind out the floor there. But
that spot is right. It's like they so desperately need a 4, and they so desperately need a 4 that can like make plays and that they can build around. Like that
Cam
spot
could work a little bit, man. Well, Cam Cog there. I mean,
it's the roster's begging for it. We'll see. I really like the top 4 of this draft.
You got a lot of options that could play the 4 theoretically in the draft here. Whether it's Caleb Wilson or DeBonzo or
fit for what Charlotte needs, right? DeBonzo, Wilson, Pete, Boozer. I mean, you could put some dudes.
They're really all kind of like big wings.
Yeah, absolutely. It is funny, like the more college hoops changes, the more like here's Duke and UNC with the two like just freakish front court talents that the NBA teams are salivating over. So I mean I really like Peterson and Debanza a lot too. At pick 5, I think to me is really where the draft starts to get a little more interesting. Started to really like Kingston Flemings at Houston a little bit.
And a lot of talk,
a lot of talk. I like him. I've only seen him play 2 games so far this year, but I do like him. Even for a point guard that doesn't really shoot threes or get to the line a ton. But Cam is the one that like really it's the roster's like really calling out for.
It's ready. It's ready.
They need to get really lucky for that.
Yeah. But all right, fellas. Well, we went about an hour and a half here, so I guess we'll start to wrap up. Just real quick, Brian, anything that's in the works for you, anything you want to plug, where the folks can find your work, what's in the kind of back channels backlog on the horizon?
Well, please you check out, subscribe to my my Substack page, briangeisinger.substack.com. It's titled Split the Action. I cover the entire ACC, but Duke is certainly at the forefront for a lot of those pieces. I've written a lot about Duke's offense so far this season, including a lot of things we talked about tonight. I was really glad that I published that Boozer Evans inverted pick and roll piece a couple of days before the Michigan State game when it basically helped win them the game. But you can also find me at a couple different 247 sites, including the Devil's Den. I should have a piece going up later this week that will also focus on Duke's offense, including some of the stuff we talked about, but you'll get to read words and see some clips that go along with that. I'm also covering the college hoops this year for Swish Theory, mostly covering the draft. In my opinion, Swish Theory is the best independent website covering the NBA draft that's out there. But if you're looking for like a clean, user-friendly, ad-free place to like read about the draft prospects, go there because there's really good stuff. And then also I am at Basket Under Review, where I'm covering the ACC. It's the Trilly Donovan page. I've published half dozen pieces or so there, and I should have one coming up, if not this week, then next week about Virginia. who has gotten off to a great start this season. I've really liked what I've seen from Ryan Odom in company. So I'm kind of all over. And then certainly follow me on Twitter at bgeis_bird. Thanks for having me on, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, we appreciate it. We'll have to get together here in a couple more weeks or a month or so. And once the calendar turns and we get into ACC play, we'll come back and kind of break bread again and get into some more of the dynamics here. Brian, it's always a pleasure to have you on. We got into a lot of things here today, mainly the offense, because we just think there's a little bit more growth there. Clearly, the defense, top 3 in the country, is doing something, extremely well. But in the meantime, we appreciate you all. So please check out Brian's work, rate, review, subscribe us as well. You can email us, TheDevilsDen.pod@gmail.com. You can find us on X/Twitter at DevilsDenPod247. Keep the faces strong and the verve high. Go Duke.